Vincent Johnson, a name whispered in fear, a name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone who hears it. His reputation precedes him, casting a long, dark shadow over the city, a name forever linked to darkness. A name that has become synonymous with dread and despair. But how did Vincent become this figure of terror? But he wasn't always a monster. There was a time when Vincent was just an innocent child, full of potential and dreams. A time when his eyes sparkled with hope. He started as a scared little boy, a boy who longed for love and security but found none. His childhood was a series of lonely days and sleepless nights. Born in Brooklyn, his life was hard from the start. The streets were rough, and opportunities were scarce. The neighborhood was a maze of broken dreams and shattered hopes. His parents, lost in their own struggles, couldn't care for him. They were trapped in their own cycle of poverty and despair, unable to provide the love and support he needed. He was placed in foster care, a system meant to protect but often failing those it was supposed to help. Vincent was just another case number, another child lost in the shuffle, shuffled from home to home. Each move was a new beginning, but also a new ending. He never stayed long enough to form bonds or feel a sense of belonging, never feeling loved, never feeling safe. The walls of each new home felt like a prison, and the faces of each new family were just strangers. Each move chipped away at him, building anger inside. The broken toys were a reflection of his broken spirit. His frustration grew with each passing day. He acted out, got into fights, pushed everyone away. It was easier to be angry than to feel the pain of rejection. His behavior was a cry for help that went unheard. He was trapped in a cycle of pain, a cycle that seemed unbreakable. The darkness inside him grew, overshadowing any light that tried to break through. No one seemed to notice, no one seemed to care. The world moved on, indifferent to his suffering. Vincent was just another lost soul in a city full of them. By the late 1990s, Vincent was on his own. He had come to New York City with dreams and ambitions, but the harsh reality of the urban jungle quickly set in. The city, with its towering skyscrapers and endless streets, was both mesmerizing and overwhelming. A young man adrift in New York City, he wandered the streets aimlessly, searching for a sense of purpose, a direction. The bustling crowds and the constant noise only amplified his sense of isolation. He would often find himself sitting on park benches, watching the world go by, feeling like an outsider in a city full of life. The city that never sleeps, a city of millions, yet he felt utterly alone. The bright lights and the ceaseless energy of New York were a stark contrast to the darkness that enveloped his soul. Night after night he would roam the streets, hoping to find solace in the city's chaos. He drifted from shelter to shelter. Odd jobs barely kept him afloat. Each day was a struggle to survive, to find a place to sleep, to get a meal. The shelters provided temporary relief, but they were far from a solution. Vincent took on any work he could find, from manual labor to odd jobs, just to make it through another day. Drugs became his escape, a way to numb the pain, the anger, the loneliness. These substances offered a temporary reprieve from the harshness of his reality. But with each high came a deeper low, and the cycle of addiction tightened its grip on him. The dark alleys and dimly lit rooms became his refuge, a place where he could momentarily forget his troubles. He fell deeper into addiction. His life spiraled further out of control. The once hopeful young man was now a shadow of his former self. His appearance deteriorated and his spirit was broken. The city that once held so much promise now seemed like a prison, trapping him in a cycle of despair. He became invisible, another forgotten face in the urban sprawl. The bustling city moved on, indifferent to his plight. Passers-by would glance at him and quickly look away, unwilling to acknowledge the human suffering in their midst. Vincent blended into the background, just another lost soul in a city that had no time for the broken. But inside, something dark was growing. A sense of hopelessness and despair that threatened to consume him entirely. His eyes, once filled with dreams, now reflected a haunted emptiness. The shadows of his past and the weight of his present bore down on him, leaving him teetering on the edge of oblivion. 1999. The city sweltered under a summer heatwave. Tensions ran high, the air thick with humidity and unease. It was then that Vincent Johnson crossed the line, from lost soul to predator. Her name was Angela, a young woman full of life, walking home alone one night, never making it back. Her disappearance sparked fear, whispers of a stranger in the night, but the city moved on. Life and death continued in the shadows. Vincent Johnson had tasted blood. The darkness inside him bloomed. He began to prowl the streets, hunting, always watching, searching for his next victim. He targeted women alone, vulnerable, easy prey. He would stalk them, following them for days, learning their routines, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He was a phantom, a whisper in the dark, leaving no trace behind except for the growing body count. Section 5. A brush with the law. His crimes escalated, became more brazen. The police were baffled. No leads, no witnesses, just a string of missing women. Then a break. A woman escaped his grasp, fought him off, injured him. He was picked up for vagrancy, a small-time offense. He spent a few nights in jail, unnoticed, unremarkable. The police, unaware of the monster in their midst, released him back onto the streets, back to his hunt. Section 6. Terror grips Brooklyn. Fear gripped Brooklyn. The newspapers dubbed him the Brooklyn Strangler. His name, once unknown, was now on everyone's lips. Women were afraid to walk alone. The police were under immense pressure. They needed to catch this monster. But Vincent Johnson was cunning. He knew how to disappear, how to blend in. He was a ghost, a chilling reminder that evil can lurk in plain sight. The city held its breath, waiting, wondering who would be next. Section 7. Web of evidence. The police worked tirelessly, following every lead, every whisper. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. Witnesses described a man, unkempt, haunted eyes, seen lurking near the crime scenes. The descriptions were always vague, but they pointed to someone living on the fringes. Forensic evidence started to connect the dots. DNA, fibers, tiny clues left behind. The net was closing in. The hunt for the Brooklyn Strangler was reaching its climax. Section 8. The mask slips. One night, a patrol officer spotted him, Vincent Johnson, matching the description. He was disheveled, his clothes were tattered, and his hair hung in greasy strands over his face. The officer's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing a man who had been hiding in the shadows for far too long. Agitated, he tried to run. Panic set in as he darted down a dark alley, his movements frantic and uncoordinated. The urban landscape became a maze of obstacles, but the police were relentless, their footsteps echoing in the night. But it was too late. The officers were faster, more determined. They tackled him to the ground, the struggle brief but intense. The cold metal of the handcuffs snapped around his wrists, sealing his fate. The years on the street had taken their toll. His body was a map of hardship, each wrinkle and scar telling a story of survival. He was a shadow of the man he once was. Worn down by the relentless grind of life on the streets, he was weak, broken. They finally had him. As they led him to the car, his steps were slow, his head hung low. The fight had left him, replaced by a profound sense of defeat. At the station, he confessed. His words were cold, devoid of remorse. In the harsh light of the interrogation room, he spoke with a chilling detachment. Each word was a dagger, cutting through the air with a precision that left the room in stunned silence. He described his crimes in chilling detail, the missing women, their faces, their pleas for mercy. He showed no emotion. His voice was steady, almost clinical, as he recounted the horrors he had inflicted. The detectives took notes, their hands shaking slightly as they tried to keep up with the flood of information. Just a blankness that sent shivers down the spines of the seasoned detectives. They had seen many things in their careers, but this was different. The emptiness in his eyes, the lack of humanity, it was something they would never forget. They exchanged uneasy glances, each one silently acknowledging the darkness that had just been laid bare before them. Section 9, Justice and Aftermath. The trial was swift, the evidence overwhelming. Vincent Johnson was found guilty on multiple counts of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison, no chance of parole. He would die behind bars. Justice at last for the victims and their families. But the scars of his crimes ran deep. The city, once vibrant, now held a darkness. The fear lingered, a reminder of the fragility of life and the monsters that walk among us. Section 10, Scars on the City. Years have passed, the memory of the Brooklyn Strangler has faded, but the impact of his crimes remains, a stark reminder of the vulnerability of women, of the darkness that can fester in the human heart. The city has healed in its way, but the scars remain, a chilling reminder that even in the bustling heart of a metropolis, evil can lurk in the shadows, waiting for its moment to strike.